Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here at the Keynote panel. I'm really excited to be moderating it. We will be looking at the next big thing in future media. We've got three quite key and influential executives from the media world who have years of experience and years of developing the media sector in their respective markets. So please welcome our panelists. We have the CEO of the Etisalat group, Ahmad Julfar. The founder and managing director, Raghav Bahl of Network 18. Thank you for coming, sir. And JB Perrette, the president of Discovery International. Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming. Well, it's not often I get a chance to sit with some of the largest representatives from media companies here. And I won't get into who is the largest in this industry, but I know that size does matter. Really, size does matter. And I suppose actually size in terms of reach, in terms of investment, in terms of market share, in terms of what is offered, content, which is usually entertaining to consumers, and in terms of infrastructure that carries all the other forms of media and delivers to the consumer, the media consumers. And also many of us are witnesses to the evolution of technology, us users and as well service providers. And what we've probably recently been also witnessing is a shift with attention moving towards from developed markets to emerging markets, and shifts as well in how media is being consumed. So if I could start with that premise, and maybe just a question, what is driving this shift?
Well, in the emerging markets, what we've seen is that, and I speak very largely for India here, is that the whole media evolution has been compressed into a matter of perhaps even a decade and a half, if I speak for India. If you saw in the West, the whole evolution has been sequential. There were newspapers, then there was radio, then there was television, then there was desktop internet, then there is handheld internet. In India, what we've seen is that for a variety of reasons, some of which regulatory, all of this has happened in the last 15 years. So we've leapfrogged a lot of stages and therefore are in the process of catching up with the way media is in the rest of the world. So in the later parts of the evolution, particularly digital and handheld digital, the gap between emerging markets and the gap with the developed markets is shrinking very, very fast. And therefore you are seeing that, according to me, is underlying this massive shift. Of course, there are macroeconomic reasons. These economies are opening up. They're getting globally integrated. Capital flows are far more seamless. And when all of that happens, commerce and media becomes far more seamless as well. So that I think is the underlying bed for this movement. But the fact that evolution of media in these markets has not been sequential, but almost parallel, has led to this very significant shift.
What is the role of consumer needs and consumption there in affecting your decisions on what to offer them next?
Well, I think, again, speaking for India, what we've seen is that ever since satellite television and digital content has emerged as the driving force of consumption, of content consumption, viewers, consumers have been exposed to global trends, have been exposed to global content. And therefore, what they are asking for is very similar sized, very similarly standardized content, but within their local language, within something that they are that they can identify with. And again, in a country like India, where the number of languages, at least 15 to 20 languages, are significant, that simply means that you've got this trend happening not in one language, but happening simultaneously in 10 or 15 languages. So we are seeing this veritable explosion. When you look at India today, there are some 600 channels, several of them doing the same thing but doing in different languages for different geographies, for different regions. And not only doing it in one format, but then doing it in another format. Therefore, there is content that's consumed on linear television, but that content is now being repurposed and consumed on handheld digital devices. In fact, that's the largest consumption growth that's happening. We are also seeing that content being made into different languages, again for handheld devices. So it's literally, if I was to say it in one sentence, it's all happening together.
Etisalat offers the infrastructure that carries all the different kinds of media out there. Again, what drives you in making a decision when it comes to looking at different markets, and especially what is attractive that you find attractive in particularly emerging markets?
Thank you, Mohammed, and I would like to thank 2454 for the opportunity to be on this distinguished panel.
Thank you.
Some of you may ask why a telecom person is talking on a panel about future media. Telecom is an integral part of the future media. We bring content providers and delivery platform together in order to provide seamless access to billions of people to their customized content anywhere, every minute. This is what the telecom role in this whole ecosystem. Today, when you talk about the ecosystem, it is not only, I think, telco and media, there's a third party also, which is what we call OTT, over-the-top players, or what I would like to call the new internet companies. The Google, the YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and so on. So what we have seen happening over the last decades, some convergence took place, cross-sector convergence. Some has worked, some did not work. For example, if I talk about Vivendi, they briefly went into the telecom sector. But today, they are focusing on being a purely media play company. And by coincidence, we acquired their stake in Morocco Telecom. On the other hand, America Online had an ambition to venture into media when they acquired Time Warner. But that has fell apart, and they had to demerge at the end. So what we see happening today is the boundaries between these three sectors, media, telecom, and internet company, is blurring. So, and this provides a leveling field of tremendous opportunities for cross-sector collaboration. Let me give you an example about Etisalat. In Etisalat, we launched eVision about 14 years ago. It's a cable TV service. Today, we have more than 500 channels. We have high quality, high definition, and we have DVD-like control on our content. And Etisalat was an operator operating in the UAE market, and we used to cater for 4 million customers 10 years ago. Today, we operate in 19 countries in the Middle East, Asia, and Africa, and we cater for more than 180 million customers. What are we doing next? We are doing a couple of things. One, we are developing the 5G network, and we want to be the first country in the region to launch the 5G network over the next few years. What does 5G provide? 5G provides capacity and speed like we never have seen before. Approximately, until today, the development has reached 1,000 folds the capacity and the speed. So people can get up to 10 gigabit per second on their mobile phone. So what I see here overall, I see huge opportunity for an excellent collaboration between telco, media, and internet companies for the purpose of providing a very unique customer experience for the future.
No, fantastic. I mean, I've got an iPhone 4, so I'm still maybe lacking in. I haven't even. I guess the next step I'll be skipping a generation, going to the iPhone 6. But it's very interesting and exciting to hear that there is the 5G technology coming up. So why is that important to me as a user? You are a profit-making company, and you are pushing this technology. Why is that essential to me?
At the end, we are thinking of existing customers and the future customers. Who are the future customers? It's our children. People who do not read the newspaper, do not read magazines, and read very little books. They are digital people.
Yes.
This is what we are developing this network for. It is for us because we need much more capacity, we need more speed, we need it on the move everywhere, but also we are developing it for the future generations.
Yes, interesting. So there's competition in how much content is being produced and sent out to consumers. And we've got all these new technologies that makes it easier for someone like me to receive and engage with technology and with content. Discovery creates a lot of content. So where and what do you consider is perhaps a priority for you to make sure that you are still competitive? And also going back to that first question, how important are emerging markets to discovery?
Yeah, look, it was interesting to hear Her Majesty this morning talk about storytelling, and storytelling, democratizing of storytelling, and storytelling has been something that since the dawn of humanity has been something that people feel passionate from the time we wrote on cave walls to the time of today. Discovery as a company has been around for almost 30 years, 25 of those in the international arena, and has always believed in the power of telling great stories. And great stories with universal appeal and universal themes. And so we've taken our suite of channels, on average, about 8 channels in over 220 countries around the world. And the first part of our chapter of our history was written on largely being a US-led content company and having an international division. We now, in 2014, as we celebrate our 25th anniversary of an international group, have, for the first time, hit a very significant milestone, which is we are now larger outside the United States than inside the United States as a company. And so we are now no longer a US company with an international division, but we truly are a global company with local market presence in a lot of the 220 countries we operate.
So larger in terms of revenue from
correct.
Other markets more
We're bigger outside the United States than we are inside the United States. And that trend will likely only continue. And so you asked about emerging markets. The reality is, as the #1 pay TV programmer in the world, the emerging markets, the definition of emerging markets has evolved. Pay TV was an emerging market in Europe 25 years ago, and we were there in its early days. As we look at this region, which we find has an incredibly dynamic and incredibly rich and an incredibly exciting set of opportunities. We obviously have a hybrid model here where we have a set of pay TV channels in the region, as well as a local free-to-air channel with Fatafit that we acquired not long ago. And that hybrid of free-to-air and pay has been a model that we've used very effectively in other markets around the world. But for us, this region, as we look about the growth, the U.S. obviously is a fairly mature market now. Parts of Western Europe continue to mature. For us, we have always been about finding new ways and new paths to growth. So for us, it's sort of threefold. Number one is finding new markets and new regions. This being one of the most dynamic in the world and one of the most exciting for us as we look at the next 3 to 5 years in particular. And as part of that, we believe very much the secret sauce is about local. We don't run things out of London, or we don't run things out of the US. We really believe in local teams on the ground making decisions and building businesses in an entrepreneurial way. And so we've announced today that we are actually localizing feeds for the regions with local ad sales on 2 of our channels, TLC and Discovery. We also will be headquartering our international ad sales hub for the entire region here in the Emirates, moving it out of London and putting it here. And so that is a big part of our localization focus. So when we think about emerging markets, it is the evolution of moving things out of sort of more central locations and into the region. And that's a big part of the strategy, and what we've announced today is sort of continuing to build our presence here in this region as one of the big growth drivers for us over the next 3 to 5 years.
So you mentioned a lot of it is locally driven in terms of deciding what content to produce and to air, of course. So is there a challenge in finding talent, finding the innovation in these other markets to generate more content and also to come up with more technology? A lot of innovation comes from the US, comes from Silicon Valley, but what are we witnessing today with that shift? Are there opportunities from these other markets?
I mean, for us, it's always an evolution. So markets always start at one scale, and we pride ourselves in trying to develop and work with local markets to help that market evolve on the creative side of the business, particularly given that's what we primarily do. And so, for example, when we come into a market, we will start with the localization of the feeds. Either, in this region, for example, one of our channels now is one of the first international channels to truly be dubbed in Arabic. And we then want to work with partners in the region to start developing local content creation, which ultimately drives the ability to foster a more vibrant creative community. Yes. You rolled out programs in other parts of the world, which are things that we want to explore here as well, where we've done things like launch first-time filmmaker programs, where we've gotten people to actually sponsor groups of young people who are interested in documentary-type filmmaking, and where we can partner with them and have sort of sponsor the fact that some of the best stuff can either show itself on air at some point or work with creatives in the community to ultimately foster the development of that creative talent in a region. And so in this evolution of starting sort of small and helping a market or a region or a country develop its creative community, we believe that's part of our mission when we come into these countries. So that's very much on our roadmap as well.
Raghav, anything you want to comment on innovation? We spoke about innovation coming from out of Silicon Valley.
Yes.
But what else is happening out there?
Yes. So when we look at this whole phenomenon of content consumption moving digital, whether large screen or small screen, whether news or long form or short form entertainment, yes. We decided to figure out where the best innovation was happening in terms of analytics, in terms of delivery, in terms of targeting, personalization, and clearly 2 areas emerge. There's New York City, where there is a lot of innovation happening in the non-fiction, in the news world, and then there is Silicon Valley, where pure tech innovation is happening. But interestingly, what we realized when I personally went and met a lot of the founders of these tech stroke media companies. Incidentally, it's very difficult today to say whether you should be a tech company or a media company. You've got to have the soul of a technology company in a media company. Only then will your content consumption get optimized. So when we saw that in Silicon Valley, a lot of it was happening. But when we dug in a bit deeper, we realized that a lot of the coding of that, so the design and the innovative template was happening in Silicon Valley. A lot of the coding was happening in emerging markets, India and a lot of other emerging markets. And that triggered another thought that is there more innovation that can be pumped out by emerging markets as well, not just the coding? And then we realized that that is entirely possible because in emerging markets, whether it's here, whether it's India, whether it's other parts of Asia, there is a lot of collateral innovation that needs to be done. Once again, language. Once again, nuancing. Yeah. Once again, targeted delivery to different audiences. Taking care of certain cultural concerns that need to be taken care of, which just a blind technology can't. You need to temper technology and say, well, this kind of content possibly will not be served in this manner here. Geo-targeting. I think all of that collateral innovation is happening in emerging markets. So yes, a very interesting trend that is emerging.
Will we witness innovation and ideas leaving the emerging markets and going the other way, or inspiring innovation in more developed markets?
Yes, of course. Yes, of course. And we are seeing a bit of that reverse sort of migration happening as well. But I would not say that that's very significant at this stage. Clearly, most of the content technology and content stroke technology innovation is still happening in the US. But it is acquiring very interesting variances, very interesting hues, very interesting collateral changes in emerging markets. What we are also seeing is, and this is a phenomenon that we've seen over the last couple of decades, is that as newer technologies and newer formats are emerging, primarily in the digital world, in the handheld world, for iPads, for small phones, the lag between the East and the West in technology, which used to be huge earlier, from the printing press down to the radio, down to television, that lag is now shortening considerably. And therefore, I won't be surprised if there comes a time when this reverse migration that you talk about will become a bit more balanced than just innovation flowing from the West to the East.
Etisalat came out of this part of the world and has its, of course, its share of some of the emerging markets. These decisions, again, you are at the head of a large group. You see things we don't see on the ground. You've been quite successful in probably most of these ventures. Is that just luck, or what came into play and gave you the revenues you were hoping to, or exceeded your expectations?
Thank you. It is definitely not luck. But luck is a small part of it, because without luck, you will not be able to succeed. Until 2004, as I mentioned earlier, we were a UAE company with just 4 million customers. Then we took on a venture to expand outside. We started with Saudi Arabia, then Egypt, and so on. We have been very successful in most of our operations. There are certain challenges in some places. Now, it depends on many reasons. I mean, success, everybody attributes success to small reasons, but they attribute failures to many reasons. In our case, wherever we have not succeeded as in other places, there's still room to succeed, because mobile penetration, internet penetration, broadband penetration still has huge room for growth in the emerging market where we operate in. Number two, the collaboration, what I mentioned earlier, between the telcos, the internet companies, and the media has a huge cross-sector collaboration opportunities. This has not been tapped. Number three, recently, about 2 years ago, we have established our own digital services unit. And one of the mainstream of this unit is future media. We are not going to compete with the future media companies, but we will collaborate with them. This is the model we are taking. We see huge opportunity for us and for others in the region. When I say others, I mean telecom, media, and internet companies. It's the opportunities we see, maybe many people do not see it. When we took on that venture, people said, success would be very, very difficult. Yes, in one or two places, it has been very difficult. But in majority of the places, it has been a great success for us, and the future is even brighter for us. If I may go to another point, normally when you talk about in any media event, lately you will hear, or you are hearing normally 5 things. That number one, they say internet and broadband will cover the globe, the whole globe, in about 10 years. Second point, media landscape is changing drastically. The third point, citizen journalism is changing the rules of the game. I will talk a little bit more about it later, but let me finish with the other two, which is the future is digital and it is mobile. Just like what Khaldun mentioned, just like what Rajan mentioned also. And last, media consumption habits have changed and they will continue to change, again because of the millennials, because of the young generations. They have different habits than what we have today. So they're going to change the consumption habits. If I talk a little bit more about the citizen journalism, I know how many people here is as old as me, but I see a few people here in front. In the 1991 Gulf War,
Yes.
the war was brought into our bedrooms and living room through satellite TV.
Yes,
And
I
that
remember.
was an innovation by itself. It was the first time ever. Today, what is happening? Events, including wars, is brought into our living room, bedroom, on our mobile, instantly as they happen. And by whom? By citizen journalism. It's not by hardcore journalism. And this is, I think, is going to be a big breakthrough for change in the landscape, not only of the media, but of the whole ecosystem. Media, internet companies, and the telecom.
We're talking then about the change of behavior and change of consumption of media. And you talk about citizen journalism and I suppose anticipating habits, I guess.
Yes.
And perhaps the role of big data here in also understanding consumer habits in media consumption. How does that affect discovery as a content producer?
Well, I think that we are at as we've talked about, at a very interesting intersection. Right now you have a world coming from Silicon Valley and the technology world that ultimately has got streams of data and user information that we are just probably at the beginning still of understanding exactly how to utilize it. And they are using that, when you take back to the content side of the business, and trying to figure out how do you use that data to better understand how do you create the content and recommend the content and personalize the content for users in a way that makes it not broad media but very personalized media. And I think the traditional creative world comes from a world where creative is developed by your gut and by a feeling and by a story. And look, the reality is both of those sides of the spectrums, I don't think the answer can exclusively live in one or the other. The answer probably lives in a marriage of both. And I think the world is just beginning still to figure out how to marry those two. I think for us, we look at that as an opportunity. We think data and data usage is clearly something we want to have much greater access to and transparency to. But I think at the same time, amidst all this change, the thing that reassures us is if you look at the great job that someone like an Etisalat does of getting more mobile devices out, we had an addressable universe of customers, if you will, or video opportunities in the traditional sense of about 1 billion TV households around the world. We now have an opportunity to address 10 billion video-enabled devices. When you count mobile phones, tablets, computer screens, everything in it. So our addressable universe has multiplied significantly. Now the question is, we now got to get the content to those devices in ways that make sense from a business model perspective, and we have to be able to measure those components. But in a world as a supplier and as a provider of content, being able to now address a much larger universe of people To your question earlier about are there ways that the emerging markets may actually leapfrog and frankly reverse the flow of sort of technology and innovation coming from the US or other markets towards the emerging markets? I mean, again, mobile is a perfect example. You know, and mobile in many ways has already leapfrogged from a development standpoint in the emerging markets, skipping generations of fixed line and going straight to a mobile. And, you know, Etisalat talking about 5G is a real innovation. Is a real innovation that, again, from a video content provider's perspective, is a very exciting innovation because there's lots that we can do to help maximize the value of a 5G pipe with great stories and great content that we can produce and share.
So we're all here for-profit companies. We're all looking for other ways of all sources of revenue. With that changing landscape, trying to understand consumer behavior towards content and how they consume with use of technology, what is the future of advertising? How does that look like?
Well, yeah, this is about the most tantalizing question for companies which have to operate for profit because that's what creates viability. My sense is that, as has been mentioned, the future of advertising will be dictated by this cross-section of technology and consumer behavior. Consumer behavior often we tend to underplay and overplay technology. So the linear 30, 60-second commercial will become vastly less important than it is today, but will continue to be very important in areas where linear consumption of content will be preponderant. And what I mean by that is long-form video content, entertainment largely, or live sports content, which is really consumed as a community affair. Families, friends sit together and watch big drama, watch big sports matches live. In that format, I do believe that the linear 30-second, 60-second commercial will continue to be a very powerful device. But when it comes to content like news, which it is our bet will move entirely, completely to nonlinear digital handheld consumption. And therefore, it will become smaller unit, what you like, what you don't like, machines learning also coming in to assist you with what you want to consume, shouldn't be consuming, should be consuming. There, I believe the 30-second, 60-second commercial will literally evaporate. And therefore, you will get newer formats of blended content advertising, what today the industry is calling native advertising. It's a very nice little euphemism where what you really do is create advertising in a form which is almost as credible as independent content. And that, I believe, will be the future of advertising. Or more than advertising, I think the definition will have to change. It'll be branded content messaging. I don't think it'll be advertising as we understand it today.
Isn't that fear of losing credibility as a content producer? I mean, I come from a newspaper sector, and it's very important to separate the two editorially. So yes, one wants to make more money, but then you might lose the credibility of your platform as a content supplier.
I think the credibility will come from ensuring that the distinction of that content is highlighted in a credible manner. Because if the consumer will not consume linear 30-second commercial, and if you need to earn money to make your news gathering viable, you have to find an alternate form of getting the brand message across to him. And if he's going to be consuming it in a native form, embedded within independent content, then you have to go there. But the challenge is in ensuring that the consumer knows that this is branded content messaging and what you are consuming otherwise is not branded but independent. I think that's the challenge.
And look, at the end of the day, the consumer rules, right? So I think the authenticity of, and your question of separation of sort of church and state between, the authenticity of it will be judged by the consumer. So if it's transparent and ultimately really feels like you're watching an infomercial for a product, you'll see it by the results of the audience. And so I think we live in a world where you can't hide anymore. And the consumer will ultimately decide with their feet, so to speak, or with their vote as to whether you've done it in a way that's appropriate or not.
Future advertising will be, again, digital, it will be mobile, and more importantly, it will be customized. Today, it's very much a push broadcasting kind of advertising, one size fits all. In the future, capitalizing on the big data you have about your consumer, you would know what type of consumer he is, what is his trends, what is his habits, traveling trends, eating habits, everything.
Yeah.
You will know each and every bit about your customers. And you will be able to customize the advertising per user.
It sounds a bit scary, like Big Brother watching and knowing every single thing about me and, all.
It's a fact of life now. We have to accept it.
Big Brother already is.
Already is.
So there's no...
Yes. Thank you very much for sharing, of course, your insight on the future of future media and just generally the future of media sector. I think we've got about just over 8 minutes, and I'd like to give an opportunity to our audience here. If you have any questions, just please state who you are and follow that with a question. The gentleman over there, please. Yes, just the microphone. Please send your questions. I notice I am receiving some of the questions here, but would you like to ask a question since you... Please, go. Yes, thank you. So I want to see which question you sent, so I'm watching you.
I sent a question, to Mr. Julfar. So it's related to when you're intending to build 5G network in 2 years. So are you thinking of having any revenue sharing model with the internet or the content? Because as we all know, 5G deployments will be very expensive and the investment will be huge. So this is basically the question.
It's an excellent question. First, we said we will deploy 5G in the next few years, not 2 years, because that technology is not ready. But we are making our efforts to be the first in the region. Today, you're talking about a bigger issue, which is net neutrality. This is what we call net neutrality in the industry. And on this issue, there is a big debate happening today. If you have seen President Obama about a week, he gave a statement about net neutrality in the US. A couple of days later, the chairman of the FCC, the Federation of Communication Commission, said in a different way, don't listen to him. We are the people in charge of net neutrality. On the same day, AT&T and Verizon have threatened they will stop deploying fiber optic network in the US because of the statement made by the president. So it's a much bigger issue, but you are addressing a very, very valid question. Telecom operators are investing hundreds of billions of dollars every year for CapEx. You have somebody else who is riding on this network for free and making money. I think there have to be a new business model between the telecom and the internet companies. And this is what I said earlier more than 2 times. There have to be a collaborative model, cross-sector collaborative model between media, telecom, and internet companies.
Before we go to that question, I got this question through this iPad, I suppose. It's quite interesting. The anonymous person is wondering, we're discussing about media and entertainment. What about the role of media in laying grounds and promoting arts and culture, as opposed to entertainment only? And the GCC is currently witnessing a major movement and investment in the field of arts and culture. And that person appreciates if you can sound out your insights. It's slightly tangential here.
Well, I mean, look, we obviously at Discovery, we were started by our founder had the very simple mission when he founded Discovery and the Discovery Channel about believing that he wanted to create a channel as he saw a lot of general entertainment channels evolving in the United States in the early days of cable that would ignite and satisfy curiosity. That was his simple mission and simple vision for a channel that he thought could actually entertain but educate and inform at the same time. And so we obviously, as part of our DNA and our culture, whether it relates to Discovery Channel, whether it relates to the Science Channel, whether it relates to Animal Planet, we have a lot of common threads in our DNA, which is to entertain, but do it in a way that also informs, advocates, educates, and so that is a sort of dual purpose that we take very seriously and has been core to our mission from the early days. We talked a lot about, and again, Her Majesty spoke a lot about education, and certainly as we look at igniting and satisfying curiosity around the world, a big part of our mission and our content is to also help educate. And we actually have separate education businesses that ultimately try and take some of the content and take them into the classroom and help educate the youth with the video content we create.
Yeah, thank you. The gentleman over there, please. Could you try? Yes. Yeah. There's another mic. Thank you.
Hassan, from UAE University, I teach mass communication. We try, in the academic field to update our students about, the changes, that these drastic changes in a theoretical perspective. Mm-hmm. But in practical, they are ahead of us. Our students are ahead of us, and that's true. Yes, what I'm concerned about is, this dramatic change or fast change. Under, big question concerning the spread, the spread of this new technology in the wide world. I'm talking about, there are the majority of people in this earth are not using, this new technology. What I'm concerned about is also, I would like to know from you how you anticipate really the spread of this media, and what locations are going to be backward, and how can we make balance between different parts of the world to use this technology and also to benefit from it. Thank you.
No, thank you for, and also why we should have that balance between the ones that are fortunate and the ones that can't get access to technology or even just content. Yeah. Please.
Well, my sense is that this is, as you said, very, very critical, that the spread is balanced and it's and this is not confined to an elite. But my sense here is that this technology is so powerful and so democratizing and so enabling that this technology will spread not because of content, but because of the several needs it satisfies of a human being to live a life of dignity, literally. So that will be at the core of the spread of this technology. Content is going to be layering over the spread of the technology. Content by itself is not going to be the primary factor for the spread of technology. I think companies like telecom companies are the ones which will be at the forefront of ensuring that this technology spreads. Simply because, as I said, at the core, it's about the dignity of a human being.
I see change is similar to a train which is on a free ride. If you get on it, you'll be able to influence the destination of this train. If you are left behind, then you have no control over where it goes. So the better option is to be on the train, to adapt change, and try to influence how this will impact. Now, having said that, to answer your question, Mohammed, about the fortunate and the unfortunate, 10 of our countries we operate in, or 11, are of the poor countries in the world. And we have 2G, 3G into these countries. And places like Afghanistan, Pakistan, Tanzania, West African countries like Benin, Togo. We have 3G. So these people, we provide them with very low handset, 3G handset, and internet connectivity. So immediately, they see what is happening across the world. Just like that. They have made a leapfrog from nothing into the latest advanced technology. You said not many people are using. The information I have today, there are 2.8 billion people in the world who have access to internet, and all studies are saying by 2020 it will be 8 billion people, which means the whole population of the world. Not only that, there will be 50 billion devices connected to the internet. So we are going to live in a very connected world by 2020. So we have to be ready. It is not a choice we have, I think. It is not an option we have. It is the only choice.
It is not a choice, as you said. We have come to the end of today's panel session. Just want to thank you all again for being on the panel and giving us your insight into where we are today and where we are headed. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for all the questions. I apologize if I could not. There were more questions here than. Sorry? Oh, yes, we'll take one more question. Please, sir, go ahead. Just introduce yourself and the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Riyad Najm from General Commission for Audiovisual Media in Saudi Arabia. Perhaps it must be a good question if it is the last one. But it's actually, I don't know, it's as if we are getting a conclusion from the panelists that in the future our only choice will be consuming media and also advertising only on the internet and the mobile devices. I'm not sure if this is a conclusion we would like all to come up with, because what we see now is that linear media is still there, is still taking good part of the consumption of the consumers, even in the developed markets. And if we look at this from the engineering point of view, if everybody is watching television in the world on the internet, I think we all know that it will collapse. It will not take all the people at the same time. So maybe we need to make a balance of this. At the end of the day, the new media, the internet, is going to complement the traditional media, but will never replace it. I think this is at least from
maybe final few seconds from each speaker, just to comment on this comment.
Exactly, I fully agree. And the point that I was making about there are certain forms of content which are still going to be consumed largely in a linear form by a community. And live sport, long format entertainment, family entertainment is very largely going to be linearly consumed.
Can you shortlist what's the next big thing?
Well, the next big thing, as I said, in news will be a shift to personalized handheld devices. But in community viewing, I believe that linear television will continue to be very, very important, probably preponderant as well.
Thank you.
It is good to have different views. It is very healthy. In my view, it will be purely digital in the future. If not 2020, it could be 2022, 2025. Linear TV will disappear. It will convert into digital TV. There will not be any more linear TV. This is how the innovation is going.
JB.
I mean, look, we completely agree, and look, the data, frankly, today spells out exactly what he said, which is still the vast majority of viewership is on traditional television. Mobiles, tablets, PC, all that is growing rapidly, and the shift is happening, but still the vast majority of consumption is happening still on the television by far. But that shift, I think we've all said, that shift is happening and there's no stopping it. The question of where will it stop, does it stop, does TV go to zero? I think I think the point of, I do think over time, the move towards an IP-based infrastructure for delivery of video content is also inevitable. I think the issues of capacity of the IP infrastructure, mobile in particular, is something that obviously is a problem that over time will have to get resolved. But also I think the thing is we haven't seen all the innovation of technology to help solve volume and bandwidth issues, peer-to-peer networks, et cetera. There's a lot of different technologies that can help really over the next 10 years evolve to allow for lighter bandwidth consumption over video in particular, which is obviously the biggest bandwidth hog as it relates to media content.
All right. Well, gentlemen, once again, thank you very much. Thank you for being here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all.